Hello, and in this video, I'm going to take you through my process of painting a portrait in MS Paint. Now, you're going to see a lot of mistakes I make. You're going to see them early on. Just my proportions are a little bad off the rip, but you're going to see how I paint over, how I adjust, and how I fix things. Even though I'm working in a software like MS Paint, there aren't any layers. It's just one layer. So the style's going to be a little similar to normal painting, except the one added benefit of digital art is you can easily crop and move things around, and that's how I end up repainting over a lot of my mistakes. So you'll see here, I'm actually going based off of a portrait, and I'll post this on the side here. Now, this portrait I found, I was so intrigued by this kid. I thought it was really cool. But the real trick you'll see here as I first start off in this painting is you'll notice that this isn't very kid-like, this portrait I'm doing so far, just how it looks. So you'll see how I adjust that in the future. But I actually thought this portrait was a really good example of just trusting the process. As you'll see, I make a lot of errors as I go through. And as you saw there, it cut through in the future because I accidentally paused the recording and I forgot to start it. But anyways, I digress. But you'll see here I'm adjusting the eyes. The main thing I noticed about this portrait is I wanted to try to avoid it looking so adult-like, and I feel like kids have very, large eyes. They have a little bit bigger head proportionate, but as you can see the proportions here, it's a little squared off in terms of the whole portrait in general, and you'll see how I fix that. The main thing you'll see here is I'm just working with a lot of different colors. I think the biggest thing is not getting so psyched with just a flat color, but incorporating a lot of different hues and variations. As you'll see, there's purples on the side of his head that's reflecting light in his surrounding area. You'll see I use orange, reds, I use yellows even, as you can see in the forehead there. I think the key here is keeping the reds in areas where blood mostly flows. So for example, you'll see the ears are going to be more of a reddish tone. You'll see that his nose has that orange reddish tone, as well as his cheeks, just like anyone would have. So that's really what I'm working through here is I'm just cleaning it up, trying to make sure my proportions are right. And you'll notice I flip the canvas a lot. A lot of people ask me why I flip the canvas, and the main reason I flip the canvas is because you don't notice a lot of anatomy errors or mistakes that you make because your mind just gets so used to looking at the portrait one way. So when you flip it, it kind of makes you see your painting from a different perspective. So I do that often to make sure I'm keeping proportions right and as I go through fixing them. Here I'm just adding details in the light area. I try to avoid adding too many details and shadows. I think that's just a good rule of thumb is you always want to focus your details where the light is hitting the character. And that's where your main subject is going to be in the light. In the shadows, you want to keep them very simple, very subdued, as not to distract and distract your viewer or whoever is looking at your art with too many of the details, but focus them where it is really important. As you can see, the main subject here is that left eye that's in the light there, and as well as just the whole right or left side, depending on how you're looking at side of his face. You'll notice I adjust his forehead a lot in this picture because the original portrait, I realized I kept his forehead way too small, and honestly, kids just have a little bit bigger of foreheads. So I had to adjust that constantly because I'm like, he still looks kind of like an adult. So I tried multiple times to adjust his face to make sure he's keeping that kid-like features to himself. You'll also notice on the right side of his face, or his left side of his face, on the right side you'll see those grayish tones, using that to reflect the light that's in the scene here. For example, I'm using a gray background, and that kind of resembles just like the light that's reflecting off his skin. You'll notice that the best way to give your characters a lot of depth, and especially your portraits, is to include that bounce light that's sitting there. So for example, I'm using the grayish tones that are hitting the bottom of his nose there, as well as the side of his face. And that helps give it that 3D form. I think the biggest thing with portraits is they can end up looking really flat very easily. So the key here is always keeping different hue variations and different shading. As you can see that it's a little bit darker closer to the bottom of where his mouth is, and then the lights are hitting over higher up and also on the sides. You'll see that's a little bit darker using those purplish tones. So overall, I really actually enjoyed doing this portrait. This was a lot of fun to do, and I love MS Paint for doing portraits because it's so painterly. You don't have a lot of blending options or a lot of really cool tools at your disposal like Photoshop or Procreate, but it's just enough for me, and I really like the process. And so I recommend, if you have MS Paint, it's super easy to get. It's free if you have a Windows computer. So I recommend giving it a try, giving it a play. It really helped me get back to my like painterly roots rather than relying on any cool custom brushes. I think the MS Paint has very, very solid brushes that you can use that gives you a lot of good tools to your disposal. So anyways, that's all I really have to say. You'll see that I incorporate a lot of different colors, the green that's around his eye, the purple and the shadows and the darker areas, and using those reds and those highlighted areas where more blood flow is. I hope you learned a lot from this process and enjoy the rest of the painting.